Okay, in this next lesson, we are going to look at shaping the tone of each track with an EQ. So we've done our filtering, we've gotten rid of the unwanted frequencies, basically the low pass and the high pass filters, cutting out all the bands we don't need. And now we're going to get stuck into the bands that we have remaining and how we're going to boost those or cut those frequency bands to make the synths or each track sound as best as possible for each track. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to pick... we'll start off with maybe just our chords track here. And we've got our EQ that we've just applied with our filters on each side. So I'm just going to have a listen to this soloed, and let's just have a look at the waveform that appears behind this EQ. Okay, so you can see that the high frequencies are quite concentrated, and there's bigger gaps between the lower frequencies down the bottom. Let's just have a look. So they're quite concentrated up here. So what we could do to improve this track is actually give these bottom end, or the bottom end around 1K anyway, a bit of a boost. So it's more of a mid-range frequency, but it's at the bottom end of this spectrum. But anyway, yeah, so we'll give this a bit of a boost to kind of increase the frequencies here and shape the tone a little bit more. So let's just have a play around. What I'll do is I'll exaggerate it and boost it all the way up, and then we'll kind of come down to a nice nominal level. Okay, while we're here, we might talk about the Q, or I guess what they call the bandwidth of an EQ. So what this does is actually shapes how steep of an EQ curve we actually make. So a really high Q really only cuts out, or boosts a small number of frequencies, a very narrow width. Whereas if we were to lower the Q, it cuts out or boosts a whole larger range of frequencies. So for this one, we're going to try to boost a lot of these lower ones down here. So we might try with a bit of a wider Q. So let's have a play around this EQ and see if we can find something that we like. Okay, so I've boosted something here, and I guess a common technique is to always listen back to what you had before and just make sure that you believe that you're making the sound better, or what you've come up with is better than the original. So I always turn the EQs on and off and have a listen just to make sure that what I'm doing is actually improving the sound and not making it worse. If I found that the original without anything done to it sounds better, I'll delete the EQ and start again. But yeah, I'll keep playing around. Okay, because I've given it this, I guess around 1K a boost, I like to drop something away down the other end. So what I might do is just change the shape of my EQ here and just lower a few of these frequencies here. So now if I make a boost here, I generally like to just lower somewhere else. And it's not a perfect science, and it's not something you have to do each time, but it's just my rule of thumb is if I boost something, it's going to increase the volume of the track. So you generally take away from something else within the frequency band just to kind of balance out the EQ. So yeah, I'm definitely happier with that, and I think I've enhanced that sound. So because my two chord tracks are the same, what I'm going to do is, if I drag along here and find my EQ, I'm going to replace this one. So I'm just going to copy this one here, and I'm going to just delete this one, but then paste the one I've just copied on top of it. So we've got the same EQ in left and right. So if I play them together, and play it with the track, we can just have a listen and make sure it fits in with the rest of our tracks. Now, generally when you're playing it with everything else in place, you might not notice it different at first, but when you start going through and doing this to all your tracks, you'll notice a big difference from where you started to where your pieces ended up. I might just go through and do this with a few different tracks. So I'm just going to apply this to one of the melody tracks here. So just the melody that we've got on top here. And I'm going to just leave the EQ that we've got here and use this and just put it in a place where I'm going to play. So, all right, let's have a listen to the track to start off with. Again, we're very concentrated in the highs up here, so I'm going to make a boost around the low end. I'm going to lower the Q so it makes it a bit bigger. And if you're really unsure, just crank one of the frequencies up and see what piece like resonates, or what you think the strongest part of the sound is and what you want to accentuate. So I'll just sweep through now and try to find a spot that I think is probably the strongest part of the sound, or the fullest part of the sound. So yeah, just again, it's coincidentally the same as the synth, but just above or around the 1K notch in there. But I think that is the strongest part of the synth that makes this track sound out. So again, what I'm going to do is I might just cut a little bit from the lower end and a little bit from the highs, just to make up for this boost that we've made here. And again, I just realized I didn't really like that, taking that away. So that's okay. I'm going to keep those the lower end in, so around 150 hertz there. And yeah, let's just have a listen to it on and off again. So you'll find that within this frequency range, you'll boost the melody and will stand out a lot more in your track. And already then, by turning the EQ on and off, I can really notice the difference between those two, like with and without the EQ, and how much more it's standing out in the track. Okay, I'm going to apply this to one more track just to make sure. I'll apply this to one more track before I go off and do every track within the mix, just to kind of make sure you get the right idea of balancing tone with an EQ. So I'm just going to grab my bass line here, solo that, and see what I guess enhancement we can make here. And let's find a place where the bass is actually playing. Okay, so you can see the frequencies within this range here are quite prominent. So what I might actually do, might make a bit of a boost up here, but with a thinner Q. Okay, so just a very subtle boost there to kind of make up for this area that's quite strong, and we've taken a little bit away from with this this high pass filter. So I've just boosted it a tiny little bit. I might just give the Q a little bit more within this section, and yeah, just have another quick listen between the two. And I guess the bass is a bit harder to hear within the whole mix on its own, but I'm happy with the way that sounds on an individual basis. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through the track and balance out everything tonally with an EQ, and we'll come back and have a listen to it at the end. Okay, I have now finished the tonal shaping EQ. So now if you come down to all of my tracks and I click on them, you can see in each one of the tracks I've played around with the EQ and boosted the frequencies that I think really add to the sound, which are the strongest part of each sound, and then also I guess cut away some frequencies that I don't think need to be accentuated, or to take away as a trade-off for boosting some of those frequencies. Another thing to think of is I guess how each track fits with one another. So for example, if you look at our bass track that kind of exists down the bottom, and I've boosted a frequency here, I'm not going to boost that same frequency, say, in my chords. I'm not going to boost it down this lower end, or I'm not going to boost it in my arps down this lower end. Most of them I've filtered out the frequencies anyway, but I guess we could look at it a bit more between our chords, I guess. Our arps are kind of down here below 1K, more around like 500 hertz, whereas if we look at our chords here, it's a lot closer to 1K, and then here again we've boosted even further, and I can probably move that up a little bit higher, but further towards the 1K mark. So I guess where we boost shouldn't be exactly the same spot. We should spread them out among the frequency spectrum. Likewise in some of the drums, for example, so if we look at the drum group, my hi-hats are boosted a lot higher than that, and my snare I've got a big boost down here to kind of get that crack of the snare, but I've taken some away down here, and I've also filtered out a bit more of the lows down here. So again, have a listen to each track, judge it on its merits, find the strongest part of the track, or the strongest part of the EQ, boost it, and cut away some of the weaker parts that you don't think you need. But I guess in the end, just trust your ears and always be listening to see whether you have actually improved the sound or made the sound worse by turning things on and off while listening to it. All right, let's have a listen back to our drop, and we can see what improvements I've made to the sound. So I guess now it sounds like every kind of bit of the piece has its own place within the mix a bit more, because it's aligned on the frequency spectrum where it kind of most fits in. So I guess this is what we're trying to recreate in your pieces. So yeah, again, go through, have a play with the EQ, and see what you can come up with.